He left her for another woman. And the strange thing
Damn,
is,
I'll miss her.
he never regretted it. Not when she packed her clothes into one small suitcase. Not when she walked out of his life without shouting or begging. Not even years later, when people asked if he'd made a mistake. If anything, he felt relieved. At least at first. Because regret doesn't always come like pain. Sometimes it comes like silence. And sometimes, it comes late. When Ibrahim Bello met Amina, his life was simple. Not exciting. Not impressive. Just stable. He worked as a junior civil engineer, waking up before sunrise, fighting traffic, chasing promotions that always seemed one step away. He wasn't broke, but he wasn't winning either. Amina made that life easier. She woke up earlier than he did. Pressed his shirts until the collars stood sharp. Packed his lunch neatly, every day, without being asked. She remembered his deadlines, his moods, the way he liked his tea. She never complained. And that was the problem. Because when someone makes your life effortless, you start believing they are effortless. Ibrahim didn't think of Amina as special. He thought of her as reliable. Like electricity when it doesn't go off. Like water when it runs clean. Necessary, but unnoticed. Their apartment was small. One bedroom. A living room that doubled as a dining space. No luxury, no drama. Amina filled it with calm. She didn't argue. Didn't demand. Didn't ask for more than what Ibrahim already gave. She loved him quietly. And quiet love is easy to overlook, especially when the world keeps telling you that louder is better. The first crack didn't come from Amina. It came from comparison. From social media. From colleagues who spoke about levels. From friends who joked that Ibrahim was settling too early. At work, he watched men younger than him upgrade their lives, new cars, new apartments, new girlfriends who looked like success. And slowly, without realizing it, Ibrahim began to feel small. Not because Amina held him back. But because she didn't reflect the version of himself he wanted to become. That was when he met Zara. She joined the firm as a consultant. Confident. Well-spoken. Always visible. Zara laughed loudly in meetings. Wore sharp clothes. Spoke about travel, ambition, and growth like she was already living in the future. The first time she spoke to Ibrahim, she looked him straight in the eyes. "You're smarter than you let on," she said casually. No one had said that to him in a long time. That sentence stayed with him longer than it should have. At home, Amina asked how his day went. "Fine," he said. She smiled and served dinner. She didn't know that something had shifted. Zara noticed him. Not the way Amina did. Not through service or loyalty. But through admiration. She asked about his goals. Questioned his comfort with mediocrity. Told him he had potential. And Ibrahim began to confuse potential with possibility. He didn't want another woman. He wanted another version of himself. The changes were subtle at first. He stayed longer at work. Started guarding his phone. Smiled at messages he never explained. Amina noticed. Of course she did. Women who love quietly still see everything. She asked once, gently. "Is everything okay?" He said yes. She believed him, because trust was her default. His mother noticed too. During a phone call, she warned him in that careful tone mothers use when they don't want to accuse. "Don't let excitement destroy peace," she said. Peace is harder to replace. Ibrahim laughed it off. He thought he was in control. By the time he crossed the line emotionally, it didn't feel like betrayal to him. It felt like growth. Lunch turned into dinner. Dinner turned into late nights. Late nights turned into secrets. Zara talked about the future like Amina wasn't part of the picture. And Ibrahim didn't correct her. At home, Amina prayed more. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly asking God to fix what she could feel slipping. Prayer is often the language of women who are no longer being heard. The night he decided to leave, rain was falling. Amina was on the floor, sewing by lantern light, trying to finish a client's order before morning. "I want a divorce," Ibrahim said. She froze. The needle slipped and pricked her finger. A small drop of blood stained the fabric. She didn't cry. Didn't shout. She looked up at him calmly. Is there someone else? He paused. Then answered honestly. Yes. The room went silent. After a moment, she asked the question that mattered most. Do you regret it? Ibrahim thought about Zara. The excitement. The promise of more. And he said the truth. No. That answer ended the marriage. But it did not end the story. It only delayed the lesson. The divorce was quiet. No shouting. No courtroom drama. No public embarrassment. Amina packed her clothes into one small suitcase. She carried her sewing machine with both hands, like it was something fragile. Ibrahim watched her leave. He felt lighter. Not proud. Not cruel. Just unburdened. And that scared him less than it should have. Zara moved fast. Within weeks, Ibrahim was living a life that looked like progress. A better apartment. New furniture. Restaurants with menus that didn't list prices. Zara introduced him to people who spoke in opportunities and investments. She dressed him differently. Corrected how he spoke in public. Confidence, she said. You need confidence. And Ibrahim listened. Because for the first time in his life, he felt chosen. People noticed. Friends congratulated him. Guy, you upgraded. He smiled. He told himself the same thing. Amina, meanwhile, returned to her mother's house with nothing but silence. No revenge plans. No dramatic speeches. Just space. For weeks, she barely spoke. Not because she was broken, but because she was recalibrating. Pain has a way of sharpening focus. She went back to sewing. At first, just to survive. Uniforms. Alterations. Simple dresses. She worked longer hours than she ever did while married. Not out of anger. Out of necessity. And something else she couldn't yet name. Ibrahim didn't check on her. Not because he hated her. But because she no longer fit the direction he was facing. With Zara, everything was louder. Their arguments were louder. Their affection was louder. Their expectations were louder. She pushed him. Why are you still at that level? When are you getting promoted? You're too comfortable. At first, he admired it. He thought pressure was motivation. But pressure without safety becomes erosion. Zara didn't want to hear about his struggles. She didn't want to meet his mother again. She didn't understand why his family needed help. You can't save everyone, she said sharply one night. Especially people who don't add value. That word, value, stuck. Because Amina had never spoken like that. Ibrahim swallowed the discomfort. He had chosen this life. And pride has a way of locking doors behind you. Years passed. Outwardly, he was doing well. Better job. Better address. Better circle. But inside, something felt unstable. Zara loved ambition, but only when it was already succeeding. She admired potential, but grew impatient with delay. And slowly, without announcement, the warmth faded. One afternoon, stuck in traffic, Ibrahim scrolled through his phone. That was when he saw it. Amina. Not tagged. Not sent to him. Just, there. A photo of her standing beside a model wearing a dress Amina had designed. Professional lighting. Confident posture. She looked different. Not louder. Not flashy. Just grounded. He clicked her profile. Scrolled. Fashion shows. Testimonials. Mentions. The woman he once overlooked had become visible. Without trying to be. That night, he couldn't sleep. Not because he wanted her back. But because something about her success unsettled him. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like growth. And growth is harder to dismiss. Amina had moved on quietly. Her business expanded from a room to a shop. From a shop to a studio. She hired apprentices. Mentored young girls. She smiled more. Not the soft smile she wore in marriage, but a steady one. She had learned something painful and permanent. Love should not require disappearance. Zara noticed Ibrahim's distraction. Are you even present? She asked one evening. He said yes. But the truth was, something had shifted. Not toward Amina, but away from illusion. The end came without drama. No fight. No tears. Just a conversation. "I need more," Zara said calmly. "More certainty. More momentum." She had met someone else. Someone already established. Someone whose future didn't need patience. She left with her dignity intact, and no apologies. The house felt hollow after she left. Too quiet. Ibrahim sat alone, staring at the walls. For the first time in years, no one was pushing him forward. And no one was holding him steady. That was when the thought finally arrived. Not regret. Just realization. He hadn't lost Amina because he chose Zara. He lost Amina because he didn't see her value until the world reflected it back to him. And by then, she no longer needed him to see it. Life has a way of moving forward even when you stay still. After Zara left, Ibrahim told himself he was fine. He focused on work. Filled his schedule. Avoided silence. But silence has patience. It waits. Weeks turned into months. The apartment stayed clean. Too clean. No misplaced shoes. No background noise. No one asking how his day went. He wasn't lonely in the dramatic sense. He was untethered. One evening, scrolling through his phone, he saw an invitation. A fashion showcase. Amina's name sat neatly at the top of the flyer. He stared at it longer than necessary. He told himself he was curious. Not emotional. The event was held in a bright, modern space. People moved with purpose. Conversations buzzed with confidence. And then he saw her. Amina stood near the center, speaking calmly to a group of designers and buyers. She wasn't performing. She belonged there. That realization landed heavier than he expected. When she turned and saw him, her expression didn't change. No surprise. No discomfort. Just recognition. "Ibrahim," she said, politely. "Amina," he replied. They shook hands. The simplicity of it stunned him. "You look well," he said. "So do you," she answered. It wasn't a lie. But it wasn't intimate either. They spoke briefly, about work, about life. Surface level. Safe. And that was when he understood something painful. She wasn't protecting herself. She had moved on. Finally, he asked the question that had been forming since the day he left. "Do you ever think about us?" She paused. Not because it hurt. But because she wanted to answer honestly. "No," she said gently. "I'm grateful for who I am now. But I don't revisit places I had to shrink to survive." The words were calm. Not sharp. And that made them devastating. They said goodbye. No promises. No unresolved tension. Just closure. That night, Ibrahim sat alone. Not broken. Just aware. He realized then that regret isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet understanding that someone you once had access to no longer needs to acknowledge your existence. He didn't regret leaving Amina. Not in the way people expect. He didn't wish he'd stayed. He didn't fantasize about a different ending. What he regretted was simpler, and crueler. He regretted that the version of Amina he admired only existed because he was no longer there. Amina went on with her life. Expanded her brand. Traveled. Mentored others. She loved again. Not desperately. Deliberately. Ibrahim dated. Met people. Nothing stuck. Not because he was broken. But because he had learned too late what quiet love looks like when it's gone. Some people leave without regret. And that's not the punishment. The punishment is realizing that the life you walked away from kept growing without you. Because not every mistake ruins you. Some simply exclude you. Forever.